now that we've done this so many times, but we're now officially live, so we're all good. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Two Tied Dads Talk Talent and Tech. Thanks for joining us. How are you today, Jean-Marie?
Hello, everyone. Well, I'm very good. Even though we had lots of emergencies and issues this morning, I'm very happy because I know that we have a great guest. So quite good. How about you?
I'm good. I've got my Harry Potter cup today.
That's nice.
Got a good cup of coffee.
They just launched a casting for the new Harry Potter actors for there's a new TV show with HBO, and they're launching a casting in all of the United Kingdom and Ireland for the next 3 people who will play Harry, Ron, and Hermione. I guess that people are gonna go crazy about that.
Yeah, I'm on the last book with my eldest son at the moment, which we're going to try and finish during the holidays.
Yeah. Okay.
So what's been going on? What's new? What have you been
seeing?
Seeing?
Well. We had an event last week where we presented the results of our survey about data and talent acquisition. So we presented it twice now, one in person in Paris and one in live.
Yeah, but there one in live replay with a green screen. Come on, this was super.
you love my green screen.
I was so happy we had a green screen behind. We even had a map of Europe, so I felt like the weatherman. That was great.
Yeah. That's a way of giving a good vibe and good energy during the events. I like it.
It was good, and a good point. We actually need to contact the winner. We need to share that.
Yes. We haven't forgotten. We still haven't sent the last actions and last feedbacks that we must do following the events. But for anyone who missed these events, well, we are planning to write a white paper that we will deliver. You should deliver mid-November with all the results of the study. Well, there's another news that I'd like to talk about, because we launched something this morning, a project that is very dear to us. You know that we are both dads. That's why our show is called the Tired Dads Talk Talent and Tech. And yes, we are dads, and we are lucky to have families. And coming close to Christmas, we thought that we'd like to give back and maybe help some children who are not as lucky and we don't have their families with them. And so that's why we are partnering with the charity SOS Village, Children's Village, in English. Basically, they build homes and they build villages so brothers and sisters, siblings are not separated when they are orphans. And so that's a really cool project. And so we are supporting them, and we are launching a dedicated event for that.
Yeah, a Christmas special for the Two Tied Dads, and we're just going to invite loads of guests, people who we've been working with over the last year and all that type of stuff. So it should be really fun.
Yes, we're really happy. We're going to have debates. We're going to have fun. We're going to have games from 9 in the morning till 6 p.m. on December 17th. So I'm putting the link right now in the comment. Do not hesitate to register now, and we will give you more information about the feedback. There will be some session in English and others in French, by the way.
So. That way we can, because we're going to try and do it European wide. And before we invite the guests, we have one more other bit of news. We have from our next episode, we're going to try a slightly different format. Our next episode, we have Jeremy Shoal joining us, who used to be head of talent intelligence for AWS at Amazon. And we're also going to have a small segment from Jesse at Stacked HR, which is going to be super cool. So you have to watch out for that one. That one's coming out on the 5th. But I think we've kept him waiting long enough, because I think we should introduce our guest. What do you reckon?
I'll let you do the honors. So what can we say about our guest, John?
He's just one excellent when it comes to TA. I met him about 18 months ago, Pierre-Arnaud, and we just stayed in touch constantly, and we're always debating about different topics and going into that type of stuff. So much experience and so much life and business experience that he can apply to tech. And he's currently the global head of talent at Backmarket. And without further ado, I will bring him in. Here he is. Hello, Pierre-Arnaud. How are you?
Hey, John. Hey, Jean-Marie. I'm doing good. How about you?
Well, we're thrilled to have you.
Good.
So I'm going to give the quick backstory, because that's really funny, because John told you that he met with Pierre-Arnaud, he met with you, and you started, talking about recruitment together. But the thing is, John came to me a few months ago saying, "Hey, do you know this guy is super, super smart, super nice?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I know him. And we've been to the university together." And so that was so funny. We were meant to do something, the three of us. Yeah. So I'm very happy that we are together today.
Yeah.
Agreed. Psychology studies go a long way,
Oh yeah,
life, right?
still useful as of today.
Agreed.
I must say.
What are we going to talk to? What are we going to talk about today? I've been looking forward to this one.
True. Shall I start?
Go for it.
So the question online was, how does one make sure that his TO team or her TO team stays relevant for the next year, like 2025? Doesn't matter if you have 2 direct reports, 10, 20. It's going to be important because there's lots of things changing right now. So yeah, I'm excited to talk it up for the three of us because we've been in the field for lots of years. I believe Meet's been 10 plus years already, including 15 in tech. So yeah, can't wait.
Yeah, you've had several lives.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I think that we will need a whole episode just to tell the story, but that's an interesting story as well. Just this topic, making sure that your recruitment team stays relevant. How did it come to you? Because I know that it's a topic that is very dear to you. So I remember you telling me that you were comparing it to. You were telling us that you were comparing it to the engineering teams.
It's because, in fact, when I started, like when my son was just a baby, I was hired as an executive recruiter, so junior, and I got trained so as a headhunter. You know, back then we didn't have LinkedIn, and we had to create scenarios and unfortunately lie to get the cell phone of people, right, to talk it out both to clients, to candidates, to close people. It was crazy, and there was this thing going on where you were so focused on delivery, you know, as making money for the firm, that in fact you didn't really have time to take care of yourselves. But the paradox was that if you were starting to hire regularly for the same company, you would see some forward-thinking companies having dedicated working hours for self-training, aka people were actually paid to get trained or to train themselves 2 to 3 hours per week on a variety of topics so they could get better. So you would hire good engineers, right? Who would fit into that mold, who would want to better themselves. But you would work 30, 40, 50 hours and you would not have time to self-train, right? And your company wouldn't pay for that. And so a gap would get created where the engineers would get better, but the TA and recruiters wouldn't. And so after a while, you won't be able to help the company because they're too high level for you, in fact. So that's how it started. And I was like, well, what can we do apart from getting a budget to self-train to work on that and to stay relevant?
If I may just ask for, thank you for that, for some specifics, like in terms of symptoms, what happened, like this gap, how did it manifest? What did you start to notice?
And Pierre-Arnaud,
Yeah,
did you see this article? I'm going to try and dig it out when we're talking, but it was something like 20 years ago. The skills like shelf life. Will you understand that in French? Like if we were saying the shelf life of something, how long you can keep something, how long it lasts, was something ridiculous. I don't know, like 10, 15 years or something. And then it went down to 5 years. And now something like 18 months is the
It's 2 years and a half in average.
Years. Yeah, on average. But I'm sure I saw somewhere it was going down to like, in the next X period of time, it will be down to 18 months because everything's evolving so quickly. Did you guys see
it's true.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's true. In some fields, especially genetics, it's the case, right?
Yeah.
And so, Jean-Marie, can you rephrase your question?
What were the symptoms? You said that you started to notice the gap. And just for the people who are watching us, so they can, pay attention to that, what kind of symptoms, how did this gap started to notice?
Okay, well, the first symptom was discussion with ExCo members or C-levels, right? One day you were working really well, and so something happens. Either you have to answer a question, and the board says, hey, come to our meeting, or something's not going right. You have trouble hiring because several reasons, could be budget, could be market, whatever. And then they call you as a fireman and you have to explain why it's not working right. But if you have no champion, if no C-level, usually the head of HR, didn't teach you about what you should present, how long should you be speaking, whether or not there's politics in this board and stuff, you would see the discrepancy. You wouldn't know how to talk to these people and what they expect from you. And so it's a very uncomfortable situation. So that's situation number one. And usually after that, they don't take you seriously, ever. Situation number two is when you engage with engineers because they have time to get better at stuff and they're more data focused and oriented. Usually they would want to talk data with you, but they have this idea in their mind. But if you, prior to this key meeting, you didn't teach them about your own KPIs and which ones matter and which ones don't, so you educate yourself about data and you have time to think about it and gather it, then the trust simply won't be there because they think they know and they know their own data, but they don't know nor understand yours, right? But they're better than you at managing them. And so because you're not literate in data, you don't have a data literacy, they don't take you seriously, even though you know your subject, right? And so that's the second problem. The third problem is depending on the country you're working in, right? Right now we're talking EMEA region, France in an international context. Most of the time you need to present things. And when you do, the thing is, if you get into TA, a lot of people say, oh, it's by chance or whatever. Because in France, out of 450 hours of self-training in HR and diplomas, you get 0 in recruitment. And so what happens is people don't think it's a specialty, even though it's a real field and you have to master psychology, sales, marketing, data, and so on and so forth, right? And so due to that, because people don't see a lot of schools existing, don't see a lot of training, don't know how much it costs to be really efficient, then you're not taken seriously. And so the gap is there as a professional on the data side and on how to talk to C-level, right?
Yeah.
So it's 3 angles where usually we're lacking sometimes because no one trained us or gave us budget to get better at it.
Okay, that's very clear. Thank you for sharing that.
But again, right, I totally agree with you on this. But how many people do you know in TA that have a budget that still have a budget at the end of the year and didn't spend all their budget? Like, honestly.
That's a good question. We talked before or after we forecast? Because usually you're good at savings and then someone grabs your money and say, hey, I'm sorry, mate, nothing's left, right?
Exactly.
So, so assuming this is not happen, actually, no, I have a lot of friends who manage their budget to do some savings for them. Now, whether or not it's planned and you have a word on planning that ahead of the year afterwards, it's a different discussion. That's why you need to have a champion, either in people ops or wherever, or finance, where you can talk it out with them so you can get that budget. If others are trained, if sales are trained to convert leads, if engineers are trained to stop doing code that crashes with lots of bugs, if C-levels are coached to be better managers, why don't you have your budget for training? Doesn't make any sense.
Okay, I have one for you. So we're talking about the skills, obviously continually trying to learn and improve and grow. What about this phenomenon that we're seeing where very senior profiles in TA are now not in the organization and more junior people are being put into that block, because we're expected to do more with less. And now you have even more junior teams, right? How are teams meant to manage that? Let's say, for example, you're now one of those people that was a mid-level that's been shoved into this like super senior role, dealing with senior stakeholders and stuff like that. What advice would you have for these people?
Well, I would say don't be shy about saying it's too early, but you need time to prepare. You cannot answer stuff on the spot. You need time to put together a report. You need to understand what's at stake and stuff because you don't want to look like a fool and you don't want to make them lose their time. You say it takes time to gather and analyze data. And what are you trying to understand? Because either we just want the simple report or you want some me as an advisor. In which case I need to prepare. If we're talking launching a new tech hub, it requires market mapping. So I need the proper tool. I need a few weeks, and then I can give you an educated answer, right? I'm going to give you a very straight example. A lot of companies 6 to 4 years ago sometimes ask me, hey, this product, we need developers and we need site reliability engineers, so people working in DevOps and infrastructure. And so what's going on is we want more movement because we have a bad representation. We want to be more inclusive. And I'm like, okay, that's great. You want to include them. Okay, cool. Now let's look at markets. So we do a market mapping and we discover that in France, for example, in the whole EMEA region, you have between 16 and 20% of women who get a computer engineering diploma. Then after that, only 2% of everyone working in computer engineering works in a series, right? And if you want former programmers to transition to working on servers, it's only less than that, like not even a quarter. So that's 5 times less. So it's 0.4% of the total workforce in the EMEA region that are women in that specialty. So you won't be able to get to the 16%. So when you go see Exco, you tell them, hey, I'm sorry. Either we steal them from other companies. In the long run, it's a problem. We start training them internally. We offer a program to convert developers to that specialty with some extra rewards. And as a bonus, there's going to be some retention because we actually train them and they don't get bored. Engineers hate to get bored. And we compensate them well. Or we do a partnership with a school that is willing to launch a new program, and then in a few years we have what we need, right? But if you have this type of discussion and you take a step back, you say, hey, wait a minute, what are you trying to achieve? What do you want those numbers for? Then don't worry, I'll work fast. I'll get you these ready, but I need the tools and I need budget. And then you will have a truthful answer. Because otherwise it's going to be approximative. You're not going to look professional, and it's going to hurt you in the long run. Sometimes you can give fast answers, sometimes you cannot. So my first advice is watch out. Some answers are so important to look as a professional, but you need to take time before giving it.
So how do you, as an individual, identify those skills gaps? Because you don't know what you don't know, right?
It's true. Yeah,
and if you're in that senior position and you're dealing with someone in HR that, quite frankly, probably doesn't have the level of experience you have within that recruitment bit, how do you identify that?
Well, there's what I would call the basic skills, the foundation, and then the skills you need to stay relevant. So it's twofold, right? If we're talking basic skills, you gotta love talking to people and writing them. It looks weird, but you shouldn't be shy. You have to write to people when you source them and you headhunt them. You have to be willing to go on calls, whether phone calls, video calls, whatever. And so that's the first foundation. Second is you have to be extremely curious like a scientist, because the key to do a good hire is the relationship with the hiring manager. So that means you need to be good at taking briefs. You have to behave like a journalist. You ask questions like if you were a 5-year-old, and until it's clear, you do not leave that room, whether virtually or at the office, because that's weeks of saved hours because you took 2 hours instead of 30 minutes. Next is budgeting. Even though you're not the one owning it, you have to be super curious and talk to finance, talk to hiring managers, but even talk to the CEO, like, how can we realistically, how much money can we pay? Because if we don't know that, maybe we're going to put our finger like that and give something that's completely wrong, right? And then nothing will happen. And the last thing is you have to be willing to learn about anything. If you're hiring in sales, you have to read about business. If you're hiring in engineering and tech, you have to read about code, developers, meetups, hackathons,
you don't need
whatever.
to be able to code, right? You don't.
No,
that's one thing
you
I would put out there.
Yeah.
It's like there is that you might know, Jean-Marie, but there is a term for that. Is when you know enough to be able to operate in the context without being the expert in the field in it. You can take enough of the information in, because so many TAs get lost in. Oh, I can code. It's like, but how is it actually helping you? It doesn't.
You need to be able to have a conversation.
Yeah, the conversation.
We call that in French vernis technique, like a technical layer. You have a surface knowledge enough to understand and have discussions, not peer-to-peer, but good discussions, whereas not knowing how to implement actually things.
Yeah.
What they are made. What they are made for, and that's one of the main issues, especially in technical recruitment, where, like you said, Pierre-Arnaud, recruiters just take the job description. They see acronyms and technologies they don't know, but they don't take the time, or maybe sometimes they're too afraid to ask, and they just leave. And the advice that you get, I love what you shared, but especially 2 advices that you gave, and I think that's some things for people to take away. One, as long as you don't understand the job description perfectly, like you said, like a 5 years old, as long as you don't understand that, don't go hunting, because that means that you're not going to be able to discuss these jobs, and you're not gonna give 100% of what you can give to the candidates. But the second thing is, the best friend of a head of talent acquisition is a management controller or a finance controller. And lots of head of TA don't create that links. I remember when I was a recruitment manager, I learned stuff working with the finance department that are still useful to me as of today. This is super useful, but the same way, like if you work in employer brand or HR marketing, these people, you have department with people who have the knowledge, so you have to, just knock on the door. And maybe that should be a basic skill for a recruiter, knowing when and how to knock on the other doors.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's like
exactly.
there was
You have to be humble because you have to be curious. You have to say, I do not know, so I'm going to insist until I know. The last basic skill is closing. You have to understand how to make a compelling offer to someone. Like you have to understand if there's true value in it. If there's not, that's fine. It's just your job to pay something, but you need to know how to present it. So you need to ask questions and say, what's the best way to present the offer, the compensation and the perks and the law, the things that we have to give to new employees, and what are the rest? What will they get out of it? Will we take care of them for 3 weeks, 3 months, whatever? Because then you can make an intellectually honest, because complete offer, right? In French law, we have something called DOL, D-O-L, where it says that if that information is not given, or if that information had been given, you would have refused the deal. It's, so it's very important to not forget something that's extremely important for the new hire. Once you have all those basic skills down, the next step is what we talked about: data literacy, learning how to write compelling things. So it's more like marketing, and more like copywriting skills that you usually see advertisement agencies. And then afterwards, it's going to be influence, among other leaders. So that's something that can be coached. Usually you need a coach for that. And then there's negotiation, because what you need, if you want to go down that route, is no is just the beginning of the discussion, or maybe, very high deals in sales. I'm talking millions there. There's some give and take. Imagine you are at the market and you're negotiating the price of something. It's the same situation. Normally, someone should be paid fairly, but there's other things going in there. There's stock options. There's where you live. There's the city. There's the numbers of day at the office or working remotely. And so that's the beginning of the conversation, right? So if you don't go at that second stage and transition from closing to negotiating, something's going to be lost in translation, especially if you start hiring managers, directors, VPs, and C-levels.
Where do you start to learn about this stuff? Because I feel like in the last 18 months, my best learnings have come from meeting new people who are challenging ideas and kind of helping. Like one of the best things about meeting both of you and Jean-Marie, we speak like so often and we challenge each other on everything. And we're like, actually, I don't think that's right. We're not afraid to say, I don't think you're right what you're saying. And then we look into it.
Discussions.
Yeah, we look. Yeah. It's not. We're not. There is nothing off the table when we're discussing about this stuff, and neither of us ever get offended when we're kind of not agreeing with each other. Which I think is super important. And I was talking to a guy yesterday, a guy called Simon Sparks. He's like in HR, people, culture, that type of stuff. And he was recently working with the British Navy. And it was all about cultural change, about how they can come up with better decisions and how do they give feedback and all that stuff. And the two things that he said, the best TA team he ever worked with was a high functioning one that had excellent communication. And the second thing was that they had excellent ways or methods of feedback loops. So they could constantly be getting better and learning, and there was no ego in it. They could, they go round and round in circles like that. But that takes time to create that kind of culture and trust. So back to my original point is, where can people go to learn if you're a senior? Because I feel like there's a lot of stuff out there if you're a junior to mid, but when you're a senior, it starts to become quite difficult to find the right level of training.
That's a good point. Think about it like martial arts, right? Or even boxing. You go from white gloves to golden gloves, or you go from white belt to black belt, but it's just the beginning. Once you have that, you do not know how to fight. You haven't taught others nor shared your skills, and you don't know if you're going to still win a fight, right? So you have to practice actually. So that's what it is. Once you have the foundation down, and by foundation down, I mean you read good books about TA, like factual books based on science, not just a collection of experiences, and you practice things. There's the one called Full Stack Recruiter, for example. It's a book meant to be open next to your PC or MacBook, and you practice those exercises. Once you got that's the one. Once you got those 400 and I am. once you practice every single page, right, you can go from beginner to at least mid, almost senior level. So that's the start we're talking about. Now, once you're a senior, what do? Well, you talk to other companies, you see what works and what doesn't. But then you need to keep educating yourself by reading other things. You need to read financial papers.
Yes.
If you hire people in finance, you need to read about business. If you hire people in sales or working for the COO, you need to read about tech, engineering blogs, go to meetups and stuff. If you work in tech, and you do these things, because if you don't, you won't stay up to date. It's like someone, for example, who's investing. If you do some investment, same if you do some gardening, for example, if you do not keep up on how to grow plants, of course, it's not going to go well. So you do read, you watch YouTube channels, you do whatever. This is exactly the same thing. If you do not go to professional meetings, if you do not stay up to date with some, not all of the latest tools, if you don't engage in discussion with your leaders, if they want to give you time, that's another topic entirely, then you won't know what's up, because staying up to date requires discussion. So you're right about that, but it's a blend of theory and practice. So reading, discussing, experimenting, and after
the doing is the
making,
important part, right? You can't,
the
you need to
doing.
fail. You need to go and you need to fail. Obviously, hopefully that will get to some success, but you need to be able,
Exactly.
you need to feel brave enough.
Yeah.
But don't you think this is, we spoke about this before, Jean-Marie, when it's like you go to do something or you think, right, this is a really good idea. I really want to try this. But then in the TA space, there's this kind of uncertainty with jobs in the space at the moment. It's a tough market and people are worried about making these tests, doing these trials for thinking, right, is that really the best use of my time? Or am I, you know what I'm saying?
That's very linked to what we said about knocking on doors. So first, like you said, trying to get new stuff in your mind by reading, talking to people. But I don't think there's much innovation in the recruitment field. From the recruitment field, I mean, like most of the stuff you get by looking and reading at some other topics, like you want to work on employer brand, you start working on a user experience and try to understand how that works. And then you understand how you work with contact points. You want to get better at your advertisements, you start to work with marketing and copywriting, and you quoted that, by the way. So it's more about how can you go onto other fields and get inspired and absorb other stuff. But then, John, you say, okay, you need to try stuff. How do you do? The problem we have, it's my opinion, the problem we have is that not many people in the recruitment understand the notion of service. And being able to provide a good quality of service doesn't mean that you are serving the people. I'm not sure I'm going to say that quite correctly in English. Providing a good level of service doesn't mean that you are at the service of the people.
Yeah, you're not at the service by providing a good service. I see what you're saying.
And so it's not because you are junior that a hiring manager knows best about what you're going to do. Maybe, of course, you need to be humble, but if that's your job, you're not going to tell like a finance person how they should, make their budget when they come to see you and they're helping you do your budget. So when you go to help a hiring manager hiring for his team or her team, well, why is it okay to let them decide how it should be done on the recruiter's part of the job, So I think this is more about the service mentality and understanding that you need to position yourself as a partner, especially, in France. I know that it's not the only country, but especially on the French market, there's a long-lasting tradition of HR and recruitment being a bit below than operational managers. I don't know if you...
It's interesting.
Do you find that, Pierre-Arnaud? It's like even when you think about like rec ops and people ops, this is what I notice. In France, that seems to be considered an admin role, whereas in the UK and the US, that's a fully functioning, like in-depth, like they're proper in-depth roles,
But it has to do with France. I love France, of course.
Me too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not France bashing.
But what's happening is the studies first were in HR, and then TA was seen as a subset, low qualified subset of that thing. And so when you started, you were either under someone in HR or under someone in finance, right? And so that's how it usually went. But how can you get better if you do not get your autonomy, or at least have equal levels of exchange, right? You need to be considered not a subset, but its own specialty. For example, when you work with marketing, you need their help to understand copywriting. They're the ones teaching you. That's the beauty of our job, is we combine several expertise. That's why it's so interesting. Now, to get there, you need their help. But afterwards, because we're not from the field, we can take a step back. For example, if given enough time to understand and practice, you start understanding after a while the principle of employer value proposition, or EVP. Then if you read enough about sales and marketing, so two different fields, you can actually discover the principle of USP, unique selling proposition. Unique selling proposition is not you've been the first 100 years ago to blah, blah, blah. It's what is it that you sold better than the others, or that you're the only ones to do. If you have that, you have a USP, and then you have an employee value proposition that's different than the others.
Mm-hmm.
If you do not have this, it's okay, but you have nothing, and then it might not be better to do the same job here, but another company, unless your manager is better or more interesting, or is a better teacher to his own juniors, for example. And because you're not from the field, you can actually see that and say, wait a minute, our USP is actually this, or we do not have one. And then you can reframe that with marketing and spin it into something that's useful. You can, for example, say to people, you can join us. I understand you change companies every 2 years. You can join us for 18 months because our ramp up phase for this job is 6 months. And the next project that's going to make us a lot of money is going to last a year. If you finish that, I do not have a problem with you switching. But what we offer you is a skill. If you worked and finish on that project, that's going to work a lot of money elsewhere. And us, we would have recouped our money, but we invested in you. So it's a win-win situation.
I like what
But
you're
you
saying, but
need-
that's a tricky
you need that.
example. This one is tricky because if you say that, but your hiring manager or your HR, I mean, the other people involved in the process don't agree with, for example, it's a very specific example that you've taken, but
I agree.
let's build on that. Like you say, okay, you join us for 18 months and that's fine. So you've personalized your own unique selling points. You need in advance to be able to say that. You need in advance to have convinced and shared that selling point and with the other people. You agree with that?
Yeah, of course. For example, you need to, if you have a good relationship with managers, you're going to have what we call usually hiring committee. If someone is hesitating between two candidates, or if someone is unsure, and they're going to be like, so what do you think about this profile? You're going to be like, well, I'm going to help you here. You're the ones who know if they pass the test or not. But do you need that profile to stay 3 years in the same position and do some good delivery, or do you need that profile to evolve or to create new processes because you need to scale? And they're going to say it's number 1 or number 2. And you're going to be like, well, if it's number 2, this person might or might not be the best case, the best person for the job because, and then you would have provided good service. And then on the other hand, they know how good the person is thanks to your skills-based assessment, right? And so it's a combination of that help between you and the others. You're the ones who bring out the external eye, from afar, or someone not in the field, and then the ones who provide the expertise, because in fact, we do not hire, we provide advice.
Exactly.
That is what we do, right?
Yeah.
Did you see? We had a question from Sophia. I'm going to put it on the screen, but basically, she was just asking, how can internal recruiters help with retention by supporting ongoing talent development and career progressions within sales teams?
Oh, that's very good. That's very good. Well, as usual, understanding the field, usually, unless you love it and have really strong commissions, if you start as a BDR, business development manager, or someone who makes a lot of calls, after a while you might get tired and you might want to transition to more complex sales, and going to see the clients and stuff. So you need to have some kind of internal academy, for example, where if you do well for 1, 2 to 3 years, the amount of time needs to be defined. You are authorized to transition to the next position, for example, because as time goes by, you can either sell more or sell bigger deals. If you want to sell more, but at the same level, become an expert in this first position. If you want to transition to the more complex consultative sales, you go on to the other one. So you need the help of the CEO and the chief people officer to talk it out, work on career track, Is there a career track with a clear-cut compensation plan and commission plan attached to it? Because if there is, then you know how to transition from one level to the other, either for another job or same level but more and more complex. And so that's the foundation. And if there's not, that's okay. The three of you can work on that. Because you're the ones interviewing people. The ones in sales know how to spot whether someone has the skill or not. And HR will tell you, well, that is what the law permits or not, and this is what makes sense during the employee life cycle. So we can help by triggering that conversation.
Yeah, and career paths are super interesting to work on as a project, by the way. So if you have the occasion, jump on that, because it's gonna make you think about a lot of stuff and learn even more about the jobs you're hiring for. But just if I may give an advice, if you start working on a career track or career path for one specific functions, try to really take a big picture, because you might want to build other career tracks for other functions. And so you need to have some fundamentals in the beginning. We have another question on LinkedIn from McAfee. What is the additional value for recruiters and related roles if they have to specialize in every technical role and sound as experts in conversation? That's a good one. Thank you for asking that.
Well, the first obvious one is if you don't do that, usually you do not keep your job. So that's the real bummer, but that's the fact. If people say or think, he doesn't know what is, or she doesn't know what she's talking about, you're going to run into an employment issue. The number two is because you're part of the people team, what's happening is you're a kind of an hybrid profile, which means you're a bridge between teams. You talk with people who are both business people, you talk also with people who are indie people, and you talk with people in the field. And so because you understand several teams, you can make bridges. For example, someone who you've personally hired can either change companies because they've been offered a position, and or can join another team because there's a role that's open. It's not their specialty at all, but they saw it. Who do you think they're going to reach out to? Are they going to reach to their HR? Are they going to reach to their manager? Or are they going to reach to the person who there's no hierarchical link to, but who hired them? 50% of the time, they're going to be like, hey, buddy, I just saw that online. Do you think I can apply? Is that you who's in charge of that? What do you think? Do I have my chances? And so that's what's up. In fact, you can get referrals, you can get insights, you can get market trends because they'll tell you they've been approached by this and this and this person at that rate of compensation. And they will ask you for advice if a new role opens at the company they're unsure of. It's going to be you or their manager all the time. Sometimes both, to get both perspectives.
And you don't have to be an expert in all the roles. Again, we mentioned it's just a technical layer of understanding that you need to have to be able to have this conversation. But you mentioned something earlier, Pierre-Arnaud, that I'd like to get back to. You mentioned curiosity. And I think that's key. Like, try as a recruiter, everyone should try to work as much as they can into fields and jobs that they're interested in. Because, of course, even if you're not interested in, you have to ask questions and understand them. But it's much easier when you like the fields and the jobs. And most of the recruiters that I see that are super performing and super happy in their jobs are the ones who love to talk to the hiring managers because they love to know more about the project, about what they're working on. And it can even be on some jobs that some might think are boring, because we all have, our preferences. But even some boring jobs, I can assure you that I know recruiters who love them and don't consider them boring at all. So it's more of a point of view. So try to find your sweet spot. Stay curious, and that way it will be enough. It will be enough. Nature will run its course, like we say.
And we have another question, by the way. Sophia again said, with commission-driven tech sales roles facing high attrition, how can talent acquisition and hiring teams proactively attract and retain top talent to reduce turnover?
That's super. Well, that's an interesting question. Yeah. That's
generate the more high quality leads, and that'd be all right.
Shooting with real bullets in there, huh? Okay.
Invest in the growth team. No, I'm joking.
Yeah.
So it's up to you to answer.
All right. So there's several ways of looking at that. The first is going to sound cheeky, but man, it's right. You have to know, and if you're not curious, you don't know. You have to know your product or service provided by your company. If it has real good chance of either being niche or within the top 3, that means you're going to be stable for a while. You're going to be able to provide good commissions as long as the sales people are good. And if you provide true value to customers, once again, talking about the USP, what is it that we do better than the others don't? Do you have a killer feature? Do you have something that's really useful? Do you have something that is not too pricey? Do you have something that gets changing? If that is the case, or something that people will always need, something that makes your car run, something to change, like something industrial and things like that, even healthcare, then your thing is going to sell. If your thing is going to sell, it's just a matter of having good sales, but they know that they can trust the product and they will be engaged. Now, if what you offer is just a gimmick or something to do a quick exit, people can tell if stuff is not picking up speed. And so you're not going to be able to retain people, right? But the product has to be good. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's all about that. I'm physically incapable of selling something I don't believe in. I just can't. It's intellectual honesty. And so you have to have a quick look at the roadmap, the current features, and the market. If the market says the product is the right one, you will be able to retain talent.
Yeah.
I've just realized how much time we've got left.
Yeah. So I think we have another question. I'm sorry, Youssef, we're not going to be able to take the time to answer that, but I'm sure that Pierre-Arnaud can answer in the comments. We only have a couple of minutes together. Well, Pierre-Arnaud, it's been great. Thank you for sharing all of these insights. Thank you to everybody who watched. We have a couple of more information to share with you. Please go on to our website if you want to follow the next program of all these events. We will share everything to the people who subscribe. So it's getpresage.com.
It's in the comments. I've just popped
it's in the comment. Perfect. So just register here. There's just one way to register. And so we will send you the link. We're setting everything on here. As well, we've set up we've given the link for the Christmas special if you want to register and help us raise money for the charity SOS Villages for Children. That's it. And Pierre-Arnaud, is there anything you want to add before we leave?
Yeah, I want to say quick 9 steps into less than 30 seconds so people get a teaser of what we should be working on. So first, if you want to retain your value for 2025, 1, adopt and integrate AI and automation. 2, leverage data-driven decision-making through tools. 3, focus on employer branding and employee value proposition, like my 2 good friends just said. 4, continuous learning, as we said, in upskilling in your team. 5, offer flexible and hybrid work models, otherwise it's going to sting you real hard. 6, agility and flexibility in recruitment strategy, please. 7, focus on D&I with real inclusion as a core strategy because people don't get fooled. They will notice. 8, prioritize sustainability and social responsibility if you have it. If not, that's another topic. And the last one, 9, as John and Jean-Marie said, strengthen collaboration between HR and tech teams, including hiring managers. And then you're good to go.
Well, that's brilliant. If you went too fast, don't worry, because this episode, as all the others, will have a replay. John, you just shared the link of our YouTube page. So it's YouTube, it's TTD, Two Tired Dads Talking Talent and Tech.
Sounds like a wrestling maneuver.
I love it.
Can you see how fast I can say now? Like,
I know, it's
I was struggling, like, saying that.
But all of the stuff is on there, all of the previous episodes and stuff like that. Go for your life.
So you can replay and just pause at every one of these 9 steps that Pierre-Arnaud just gave.
And just to add, one of the things that we're really trying to do is for us to keep getting better and to get feedback. That's super important to us. So if anybody has any feedback for us or anything, feel free to send us a message. And for us to be able to communicate as easy as possible to everybody, so you don't miss an episode, please do go to the website www.getpresage.com and subscribe. So we're going to start sending updates as all the episodes coming out.
Excellent.
Thank you so much, Pierre-Arnaud, and thank you to everyone who asked questions and got involved. It was a great episode. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was awesome.
So happy to have done that with you. Thank you, Pierre-Arnaud. Thank you, John.
Nice one.
Take care.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.